The Supreme Court is considering whether to allow a question about citizenship on the 2020 census. President Trump's Commerce Department argues that the data will help protect voting rights, but critics say that the question could prevent people from actually participating in the survey, and that includes immigrants. So far, the court appears split down ideological lines, but the Huffington Post reports whatever the decision, the case could have significant consequences for the next decade and beyond. The author of that article, Sam Levine, is here with me on set to talk about this. So Sam, you've got the Commerce Department and the Trump Department weighing in on this. Why do they feel so strongly about this, and how could this help protect voting rights?
Well, the argument from the Trump administration is that this is needed to better enforce the Voting Rights Act, that they don't have specific enough citizenship data to adequately know where they should be paying attention to enforce voting rights violations. That is strongly, strongly disputed by the plaintiffs in the case and several other former Justice Department officials who say that the decennial census, which goes out to every household, hasn't asked about citizenship since 1950. The Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. So how can it be that after all these years, the Trump administration suddenly has discovered that they need this data to better enforce the Voting Rights Act?
So in your article, you say that this case could have significant consequences for years to come. What are those consequences, and what would you say are the arguments on both sides on this?
So the census is used in so many important ways. It's used to determine how political seats are allocated to the states. It's used to determine how $880 billion in federal funds are allocated each year. Businesses use the data to allocate where they're going to open new stores and spend their resources. So it's really the foundation of how we know who's in America and where they live. No one disputes the importance of the data, but the Trump administration says that the accuracy of that data will not be compromised by adding a citizenship question. The plaintiffs in this case say it will be inalterably compromised.
You know, earlier today, the president tweeted, I'm quoting here, the American people deserve to know who is in this country. Does the president have a point there?
The president does have a point. The government does have a right to know who is a citizen and who is not. But what's disputed in this case, and why I think the president's tweet is a little misleading, is how the government should go about finding out that information. The Census Bureau advised the Commerce Department that there were other ways they could get this data other than asking the question on the census. They could use existing governmental records to find who's a citizen and who is not. And the Commerce Department opted, even though they had evidence that using the records would be a better way of getting the data, they opted to ask the question anyway. And that's the big question. Why did Wilbur Ross choose to ask the question instead of using alternative and maybe more reliable approaches to getting that information?
When you look at the breakdown on the Supreme Court, 5-4, leading toward a conservative majority at this point, you know, it seems like they might take this and approve the citizenship question. Can you give us sort of some of the key moments during the debate that took place yesterday?
Well, I think a key moment came when Justice Roberts was questioning a lawyer for the plaintiffs, and he said, are you disputing that this wouldn't be helpful for enforcing the Voting Rights Act? And that's really a misleading question, I think, because it's not that the citizenship data wouldn't be useful, it's how you go about getting it. And the whole point that the plaintiffs are trying to make is that there's a better way to get the data that the Justice Department wanted. But I think that question shows that Justice Roberts really doesn't see the argument that this would be harmful and really thinks that this would support enforcing the Voting Rights Act.
When you look at the voices on the Supreme Court, who do you think really has the most sway?
Well, I think Justice Roberts is unquestionably the swing vote now. With Justice Kennedy's retirement, the court has moved even further to the right, and Justice Roberts is now, I think, the justice that all the plaintiffs are coming to try and get his vote.
Samuel Levine, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.